Yes, hello. I'm here with Ian again, and we're going to read and then discuss the Grimm's brothers story, The 12 Huntsmen. So there was once a prince who was betrothed to a maiden, the daughter of a king, whom he loved very much. One day when they were together and very happy, a messenger came from the prince's father, who was lying ill, to summon him home as he wished to see him before he died. He said to his beloved, I must go away and leave you now, but I give you this ring as a keepsake. When I am king, I will come and fetch you away. Then he rode off, and when he got home, he found his father on his deathbed. His father said, My dear son, I wanted to see you once more before I die. Promise to marry the bride I have chosen for you. And he named a certain princess. His son was very sad, and without reflecting, promised to do with it what his father wished, and thereupon the king closed his eyes and died. Now, when the prince had been proclaimed king, and the period of mourning was past, the time came when he had to keep his promise to his father. He made his offer to the princess, and it was accepted. His betrothed heard of this, and grieved so much over his faithlessness that she very nearly died. The king, her father, asked, Dear child, why are you so sad? You shall have whatever you desire. She thought for a moment, then said, Dear father, I want 11 maidens, all exactly like me in face, figure, and height. The king said, If it is possible, your wish shall be fulfilled. Then he caused a search to be made all over his kingdom till the 11 maidens were found, all exactly like his daughter. The princess ordered 12 huntsmen's dresses to be made, which she commanded the maidens to wear, putting on the 12th herself. Then she took leave of her father and rode away with the maidens to the court of her former bridegroom, whom she loved so dearly. She asked him if he wanted any huntsmen, and whether he would take them all into his service. The king did not recognize her, but, as they were all so handsome, he said, Yes, he would engage them. So they all earned the king's service. Now the king had a lion, which was a wonderful creature, for he knew all secret and hidden things. He said to the king one evening, You fancy you have 12 huntsmen there, don't you? Yes, said the king. You are mistaken, said the lion. They are 12 maidens. The king answered, That can't be true. How can you prove it? Oh, have some peas strewn in your anteroom tomorrow, and you will soon see. Men have a firm tread, and when they walk on peas, they don't move. But maidens trip and trot and slide and make the peas roll about. The king was pleased with the lion's advice and ordered the peas to be strewn on the floor. There was, however, a servant of the king who favored the huntsmen, and when he heard that they were to be put to the test, he went and told them all about this, and said, The lion is going to prove to the king that you are maidens. The princess thanked him, and said afterwards to her maidens, Do your utmost to tread firmly on the peas. Next morning, when the king ordered them to be called, they walked into the antechamber with so firm a tread that not a pea moved. When they had gone away, the king said to the lion, You lied. They walked just like men. But the lion answered, They had been warned of the test and were prepared for it. Just let 12 spinning wheels be brought into the antechamber, and they will be delighted at the sight, as no man would be. This plan also pleased the king, and he ordered the spinning wheels. But again the kind servant warned the huntsmen of the plan. When they were alone, the princess said to her maidens, Control yourselves, and don't so much as look at the spinning wheels. When the king next morning sent for the huntsmen, they walked through the antechamber without even glancing at the spinning wheels. Then the king said to the lion, You lied to me. They are men. They never looked at the spinning wheels. The lion answered, They knew that they were on their trial and restrained themselves. But the king would not believe him any more. The 12 huntsmen always went with the king on his hunting expeditions, and the longer he had them, the better he liked them. Now it happened one day when they were out hunting that the news came of the royal bride's approach. When the true bride heard it, the shock was so great that her heart nearly stopped, and she fell down in a dead faint. The king, thinking something had happened to his favorite huntsman, ran to help him and pulled off his glove. Then he saw the ring which he had given to his first betrothed, and when he looked her in the face, he recognized her. He was so moved that he kissed her, and when she opened her eyes, he said, "Thou art mine, and I am thine, and nobody in the world shall separate us." Then he sent a messenger to the other bride and begged her to go home, as he already had a wife. And he who has an old dish does not need a new one. Their marriage was then celebrated, and the lion was taken into favor again, as, after all, he had spoken the truth. I don't know if you were laughing because of it, but I was laughing at the dish part because that was like close to the end of another story that we'd read that we talked a lot about with the dishes. Oh God, what
Oh
was it?
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The one where the bodyguard falls in love with like the noble's daughter
Yeah, exactly.
and has to go find the dragon and his wife and then comes back and the noble whose daughter he's in love with is like selling dishes.
That's
Yeah.
right. Or her father. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
the king's bodyguard.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I was laughing just because it's funny. It's a funny turn of phrase. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need my new dish. I've got my old dish,
Yeah.
who I'm in love with.
Yeah.
And the Pittsburgh uh, website that you sent me that with this tale on it, it must be a different translation because there's little changes throughout that don't make any bit of difference. But
Mm.
that line at the end, it's changed to someone who has found an old key does not need a new one.
Ah, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I looked up because I noticed that when I was reading these over earlier, and I looked it up and I couldn't tell. Well, not I couldn't. I'm sorry, not that I couldn't tell. I looked up the German words for like plate or dish and
Mm.
key, and they're
Mm.
nowhere near each other. So I'm not
Mm.
sure. I'm not sure what. Maybe these are like different editions of the Grimm's tales or something. But
Yeah.
it's interesting that that key symbol is switched, and
Yeah.
I meant that unironically. But the important symbol at the end there in that phrase, the important part of that phrase is switched, and the
Yeah.
symbolism of a dish and a plate are very different, or a key and a plate are very
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would take that would change depending, but it seems like it's just the translator's choice or something like that. So maybe, but yeah, yeah, just as far as storytelling, it's an interesting difference. We could, I'm sure, go off all on like the difference between the key and the plate and everything.
I'm sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. But let's start at the beginning. Did anything stand out to you from like the first bit?
I mean, so what happens at the beginning? The prince is already betrothed to a maiden, so it's almost like close to the end of many other stories. You know, the marriage is about to happen, but then he has to go away. So then the action starts and his father is dying. Um, I mean, one of the first thing I notice is that's just seemingly in some ways, especially with the king dying, that's like different for me than than how most fairy tales seem to start. You know, that
Hmm.
there's often a dead parent; they're already dead at the beginning, or at the end, there's like going to be a marriage. But here, it's the beginning's a little different.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. I hadn't really thought of that specific element of it because it does sort of start with them in a kind of happily ever after position of like, oh, the
Yeah,
prince and his fiance are in love and they're together and then this happens.
yeah,
I thought it was interesting that there's two fathers in the story. There's
mm,
the prince's father, the king, who's sick, and there's the fiance's father who seems very caring and very interested in his daughter's well-being.
yeah.
Um, and I don't know if you have the father standing in like the figure, the symbol of the father,
Mm,
standing in for like a social order, like the
mm.
like patriarchy in the non-negative sense, just the base definition of the word of like
Hmm.
the male social structure.
Hmm.
Um, I thought that was
Both of
kind of
those are
interesting.
kings. So
Yeah. Oh,
both
yeah,
the
that's right.
fathers are kings. So yeah.
That's right. That's right. I forgot the second one was also a king, which would give us two princesses as well. Um,
Yeah.
two sort of noble women.
Mm.
Um, and I also like towards the end at some point, which maybe when we get there we can go into it in more detail, but they describe one of them as the true bride,
Mm.
and I feel like that's sort of, I don't know, it feels to me like it's letting the veil slip. Like this the story like the it's putting the theme very much to the forefront instead of holding it kind of behind the scenery
Hmm.
of like of um the prince being confused by his father's need, the sort of social needs, and losing his connection to some truth in him.
Hmm.
Like, if she's the true bride, then she's representative of something true,
Mm.
as opposed to this sort of other one, which would have to be the false bride.
Mm.
And I don't know, I think the father, the ill father telling his son, you have to choose, you marry, please promise me you'll marry the woman that I choose for you. Um, just on a everyday level, like how come the father didn't know his son was already betrothed to this other princess whom he was in love with? Like, why is the
Mm.
father making this demand?
Mm.
But if you look at it on a more like poetic, symbolic level, you have a father, a sick father, so a sick social order,
Mm.
um, a sort of um, if you map that onto like at least normal people's present day experiences, like the need to choose a woman that matches a checklist of who the ideal partner is supposed to be instead of the person
Mm.
you're truly drawn to, even if
Mm.
they don't necessarily meet your like standards of like she needs to be this tall and this good
Mm.
looking and these measurements and this much money. And if I
Mm.
have all of these specific things, if she meets all my check marks, then she will make me happy,
Mm.
you know. So because that's a very masculine way to go about relating.
Mm.
It's a list. You form it ahead of time. It's got
Mm.
steps. You check them all off. Like it's a very
Mm.
like you go and you do a thing and you make sure it's done, and then that will ensure success.
Mm.
Whereas in relational realities, it's much more like how do you feel with the person? Is
Mm.
there a love there? Is there are you with them and you're not even sure why? Like, oh, I love this person and I know she has all these flaws, but I'm drawn to her. And not like flaws like because that could also be kind of taken poorly, but just like human flaws, like, oh,
Mm.
she's not the perfect height. She's not perfectly as wealthy as I would love my partner to be, but I'm still drawn
Mm.
to her for some reason. There's some resonance in my heart with this person.
Mm.
Um, and I feel like that's at least one way to take this initial thing. It reminded me of I was watching the Muppets Christmas Carol over the holidays, and you have Michael Caine as Scrooge. When he goes back in time with the ghosts of Christmas past, you see him as a youth working for his boss, and his boss is very profligate. He's throwing this big Christmas party, and Scrooge meets, the young Ebenezer meets a woman there, and they have this attraction, they have this draw to each other. And then the next scene in the movie is, and I don't know if this is from the book, I should probably reread
Mm.
the book, but in any case, it's for sure in the movie. The
Mm.
next scene in the movie, she's saying, Ebenezer, why can't we be married? And he says,
Mm.
oh, well, I need like the business is just starting to do well. I need to make some more money. I need to like make sure we have the security, and then once that, then we can get married. And obviously, as I think everybody knows, Ebenezer is not married, and so that she breaks up with him. She's like, I can't keep waiting for you to have the perfect conditions for us to be together. And I
Mm.
feel like we're looking at something similar here with the sick king father and the son, that
Mm.
there's some sort of a, even if it's just in like, you can map it on like, oh, in my head, like my dad or my mom or the way I'm supposed to be would never allow me to be with this type of woman. I
Mm.
need somebody who's better, or I'm not ready to be emotionally open with anybody. I need something figure like with the Scrooge story, I need enough money to make sure it's safe.
Mm.
Um, so that was just sort of how I took that beginning part, sort of the thing that steers the prince off of the true path, and then I don't know, and then it kind of goes from there. But would if you got anything to say?
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking along those same lines, and also you could think of it more simply too, or both. Also, this in that political marriages, which
Mm,
you're looking at things besides what is in someone's heart, and this story clearly starts with he loved her very much one and when they were together they were very happy, and that's
mm,
the halcyon beginning of the story
mm,
until the as you say the sick order, the sick king kind of summons him, and then he's upset about that and kind of discombobulated, and then he's kind of I guess you could say he makes a poor decision or he makes a hasty decision or something like that.
yeah, I mean, I think they even say, especially in the one that you were reading, it says
Mm,
he was grieving and he didn't think or something like that.
yeah.
Um, the one that I have up says, the son was so grieved that without thinking, he said, "Yes, dear father, your will shall be done."
Mm,
And then the
yeah.
king died. So that
Yeah.
was like, last words spoken to the father. Um, and he seems to kind of forget, like he seems to kind of put himself under a spell at that point, and that you
Yeah.
never hear the prince. You don't hear him mention his fiance, his previous
Yeah.
fiance. When she shows up, he doesn't recognize her at
Yeah.
first. I mean, she's kind of in disguise, but I mean, um, and there's no mention of him being engaged previously. So she just kind of, within his channel of the story, she just stops existing at that point.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of strange, or
Yeah.
maybe not strange, but telling.
It's it's interesting, and give that is given that he has already made her a promise. In general, like in these stories, I pay attention a lot to when someone makes a wish, makes a promise. They put their word into the ether, It's an
Mhm.
important moment. And then I think you put it well in saying it's all he kind of puts himself under a spell or something like that. It's like his father dies, and I think that's a good way to look at it. It's like the social order is sick and now it's like in a crisis. And I think often people in their lives or a polity in a crisis will try to look for a solution that checks the boxes. And I would say maybe part of the reason things got to such a crisis is because they've been looking at things too right-brained and too checking boxes. Okay, we're doing the things we're supposed to do, but things keep getting worse. But, not letting the intuition in, as represented in this story by the heart and the prince's love and everything.
That's interesting. Yeah, because that one, I totally agree. The way, a polity or a civilization or whatever a society will have its own list of checkboxes, and try and solve problems with those. I think we see a lot of that in our present society with trying to deal with the ecological crisis. A lot of the stuff that we try to do seems to end up making it worse, which implies that our strategies are coming from the same place that is causing the problems. Um, so we would need to find, what was it? I've heard this attributed to Einstein. I'm not sure if it is, but there's a quote of like, you can't solve a problem at the same level of thinking that created the problem.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what we're doing, as a society, and that's sort of, maybe, I mean, we've talked about the meaning crisis. That's a theme for us here. I think that's one of, if not the kind of underlying thing, is that there's something inherently built into the way we look at the world that is causing the problems, and we stay within that particular mind state or that view of the world and try and solve the problems, but the mind state itself is the problem. So we're like trying to fix symptoms or trying to wash something with a hand that's already dirty, and we need to kind of step out of that view and let that dissolve, which I think we've discussed in several different ways.
Dionysus.
Dionysus. I remember at one point we were talking about temples in Thailand. I don't remember what episode it was, but you were talking
Oh,
about
wow.
having gone to Thailand and the temples sort of holding
Ah,
the eternal nature, and so then the civilization can fall away because the sort of religious or spiritual element is so present within
yeah.
the society that the social level is able to sort of fall away and die. Not that we should necessarily look to Thailand as some sort of enlightened civilization, but the loss of religion as a noble thing in the West
Mm,
being an underlying cause as well. I think we see that in what you're pointing to, and the need for. I mean, there is an element of like the need for power or the desire for power here, and that the prince
yeah.
becomes the king. It
Mm,
reminds me of the Theseus myth a little bit, where Theseus is on Naxos, I think, some island with Ariadne, having killed the Minotaur.
mm.
They escape together and they're there,
Oh, right.
and then he leaves her on the island and goes back to Athens, but forgets to switch the sails. And so his elderly father, who he's coming back to meet, thinks that he's dead and dives off. And so when Theseus comes back, he finds that his own actions have killed his father. And
Yeah.
I see that mapping here with like the father dying, the old social order dying, but the new order sort of not meeting that moment correctly.
Yeah.
And so the illness is perpetuated. In this story, the true bride is not married, it's the false bride that ends up being married because
Yeah.
he couldn't speak his truth to his father in this case.
Yeah.
He couldn't say, "No, I'm sorry, Dad. Like, I know you're dying. I don't want to marry that princess. I'm already betrothed to somebody else." Like, he wasn't able to stand up for himself in that moment.
Yeah.
Um, which, if there's some, you know, fealty to his father's wishes, like, okay, like I can understand that, but
Hmm.
um, that's not so power hungry. That's trying to respect your dad. But if we're mapping the social order onto the dad, then it's like you're doing what you have to do to get the social order's blessing to be king.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of zhuzh the lines a little bit and get to that conclusion from it.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's right. That was great bringing in Theseus and Ariadne there. Yeah, I'd say as someone inheriting, a it could be any social order, even at the level of a family or something smaller or something like that. Yeah, you don't want to just so I mean the fact that it was in a state of some kind of sickness seems like something is wrong, and yeah, you want to try to bring in your wisdom, wiliness, courage and things to not willfully just go with your whims, of course, but at the same, yeah, not get bowled over by whatever the dying wish is that, this is the last solution I came up with, and just, it, these kind of things didn't really work out before, but just say that you'll do it now, you'd want a future ruler to kind of be more wise than that, more wily, and to be able to be respectful, polite, whatever is proper, but at the same time do what's best too.
Mhm.
And it seems like he doesn't, and that the like moral logic is he made the wrong decision, and then the errors compound after that, and then the later on the sort of uh not the sort of chimerical or the shape-shifting female has to come in later and kind of trick him into seeing the truth. They have to use a disguise to to make him see properly,
Yeah, yeah, and
court
I
jester
like
or
the
something.
yeah, yeah,
Metaphor.
yeah. Sorry.
Oh no,
Um,
sorry.
um, I like that the sort of the true bride has to come back in under a disguise,
Yeah.
because if he is under a spell, he's not going to recognize her,
Yeah.
right? But so like if we're looking at this metaphorically, like the truth that we abandon will still be in our lives, but we won't be able to recognize it anymore because
Yeah.
we've put ourselves under the spell. We've agreed to whatever we've agreed to for the social to meet the social order's requirements, right?
That's
But
right.
I really like that she comes back with 11 other versions of herself because to me it's um like it's like a fractured mirror, right? Like it's like one of them is true and the rest are all like similar reflections, but they're not true. So there's like a, I don't know, like the almost like the true self when we get drawn away from it to a certain extent, then appear like almost holographically like appears in a bunch of different things, but we have to find what's true. I don't know how to describe this better. It's I can see the image in my mind of
Hmm.
like the one thing, like it's a mirror, like the one mirror, and you break it and it breaks into 12 pieces.
Hmm.
And they all reflect the same, but it's also like a hall, like a maze in that the prince has to recognize which one of them
Hmm.
is the true bride
That's
to
right.
to
Yeah.
really be reunited with her. And I
Yeah.
was thinking when you were talking about the social order and the sort of the you need the prince to sort of, you would want a ruler to be kind of wily and stand up for, and not just go along with it. I had this sort of image come up of um the you could map this story, like you could map the false bride and the true bride onto like a somebody who's, it's kind of stereotypical story, but somebody whose father has built a large business
Hmm.
and they want to pass that business on to their son, but the son wants to be an artist,
Hmm.
something like that. Or even just more metaphorically, like you want to follow your calling, but you feel like you have to do these things.
Hmm.
And the more often you make the choice of like, oh, but I have to do these things, then the true thing that you lost is still in your life, whatever creative pursuit might be, or whatever. Maybe it's a business pursuit and your dad wants you to be a musician. Who knows? But whatever it is that your true calling is, like it's still there, but you have to suss it out um, from like the things that it's hidden between, the things that seem close but not quite the same, and maybe this is it, but it's not quite working for me, and you have to like. I think at the end he ends up taking the glove off, and he
Hmm.
see he sees the ring. So there's an
Hmm.
unveiling there
Hmm.
of the symbol that he gave her
Hmm.
so that she could remember him when he's gone.
Yeah.
She presents it to him and he remembers her. So there's this nice little mirroring there as well.
Yeah.
And in that moment, the fracturing collapses back down into
Mm.
the single truth, and he there's that moment of recognition.
Mm.
So I love that it was 12. I'm thinking of like, I don't know, 12s are, you've got the clock, you've got the months of the year, you've
Mm.
got the zodiac signs. There's like 12, base 12 is pretty common. And I saw a video saying that I think in Germanic, that the reason we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13, 14. So the reason
Hmm.
11 and 12 are different is because there used to be a base 12 counting system
Oh, wow.
in like either Old English or Old German, because I forget where the numbers come from, but like
Yeah.
the origin of those was they're named that way because originally it was 12. And so
Oh,
you'd have,
okay.
yeah, you'd
Great.
have like you'd have like 100, and then you'd have like a large hundred, and the large hundred was 120.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, because it was like 10,
That's
it was
great.
10 of the base pair, yeah. So the count of 12 seems very baked into the cultures that we're pulling these stories from, is I guess what I'm trying to say. And so for something to break into 12 would imply like it's the one truth broke into an entire group. Because like if with our counting it goes to 10. So if you imagine like the one thing being broken into 10 things,
Hmm.
it's like it's a whole grouping of things now. It's not it's
Hmm.
not a single thing, it's like a complete grouping. So it's
Hmm.
got the completeness of the one, but it's also got the confusion of the
Hmm.
many,
Hmm.
and it's like a whole many.
Hmm.
So I'm riffing a bit widely here, but I really liked that the image of like the 12 identical huntsman women disguises. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, it's a great image, and I liked how you unpacked that. I mean, so many things to be said, but I thought particularly when your interpretation of the story being sort of like your father's dying and you're supposed to inherit the business empire, and so you go along with it, but you're really supposed to be like an artist, and then maybe the business deals that come up, the people in the companies that you happen to be drawn towards, they're always involved with arts, right? And it's like you're confused because these are not the best business deals, or you're getting distracted by those things when you're supposed to be thinking about the spreadsheets and stuff like that. It's like the similar thing to the bride that you forgot about, that you were in love with, keeps kind of appearing to you. It's not quite that bride, but it looks like it, but you don't recognize her, but it keeps coming up. And it's this sort of, I mean, yeah, I really like that interpretation of it. Um,
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And not to jump, well, I am going to jump far ahead in the story, I guess, just to make this point. But it's interesting to me that when that the truth is revealed at the end, when in sort of a counterintuitive sense, like the king, the new king, the prince made king, is sends his proposal to this false bride, and she says yes. There's that agreement has happened. And then that information travels back to the true bride,
mm,
breaks her heart. She almost dies from this broken heart. Her father says, "My dear, what can I do for you?" She says, "Find me 11 other maidens." He's like, "If I can do it, I will." He goes all over his kingdom. He finds the 11 maidens. He brings them together. The princess dresses them up the same. They go to the other prince and they say, "Will you hire us as huntsmen?" And the other prince says, I'm imagining you something familiar about you. Yes, of course. You can all come into my employ. We're going to go hunting together. They go hunting together. They get to know each other over time.
mm,
They go through all these trials with the lion and everything. And then one day they're off hunting. The lion's been exiled, and they're off hunting. And all of a sudden, the false bride is like approaching. So has she just been traveling from her kingdom throughout that entire time? Like, why was there such a gap between? I mean, I understand why because it works symbolically, but it just on the, realistic story level, it doesn't make any sense that it would take her that long to. Because it seems like she's just showing up here because
mm,
he sends her away and he says, "No, no, I don't need a bride. I already have one. Why would I get a new dish when I have one that works perfectly well for me? I don't need another one. I have this one." So
mm,
it's not like he was already married to the false bride.
yeah,
Um, so it's interesting that like as she's showing up, as she's finally coming into the story as a presence, that causes the true bride to again almost die.
yeah,
So like the prince in that moment has the choice of like, is he going to recognize the truth or is he going to double down on the falsehood and just move ahead with the wedding? And so
yeah,
it becomes this like this point of almost like initiation or challenge.
mm,
Reality is sort of challenging the king of like the prince king, like, will you recognize your true bride in this moment? Because she has fallen. Will you go and care for this person and in doing so have the truth be revealed to you where you see the ring and will you recognize her? So if we're talking about like, I mean, how many how many movies from the 80s if we're talking about like somebody whose father has, oh, you have to be in the business. Okay, dad, I'll be in the business. And then it's like the climax of the play or the story is like there's some big meeting where he's gonna do something dastardly with like mergers and acquisitions and then like his old girlfriend from the artist days comes up and like they fall in love and he's like tears up the contract and like leaves the business,
mm.
you could see that. I could see that happening in like any of the, I don't know, Julia Roberts movies or whatever from the 80s, the
Yeah, romantic comedy kind of thing.
yeah, romantic comedy kind of thing, exactly. But it's just at that moment where the hero or the prince in any case is kind of unbeknownst to himself, he's being challenged. And I thought
Mm.
I thought that was I thought that was pretty cool just to map it onto the business artist kind of dichotomy that we've created for ourselves in our society.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still a little baffled by exactly what that means, but I mean, there's like a few almost deaths and deaths. The princess, as you pointed out, almost dies twice. And both of those times, those lead to drastic action. They're both turning points in the story.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
the original starting of the action is initiated by the father dying. So there's this sort of the prince is sort of getting drawn to like different points, different actions and points in the story from someone almost dying or dying. I mean, it gets your attention.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Those are like the three key moments where like key shifts happen in the story, you
Mm,
know? Yeah. Yeah. Cause if the father hadn't died, they would have been together. No problem. If the princess hadn't almost been dying, her father wouldn't have said, "Child, why are you so sad? What can I do for you?" He
mm.
wouldn't have been drawn to help her. And then again, although we're in danger of the like women only get what they want when they're fainting away and they need help. But
Well,
that's not true at all because she proves to be quite effective as a huntsman and
oh
whatnot.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, she took a lot of action before that. But she does, yeah, it still doesn't quite work. This prince almost seems like just a little complacent. Like
Yeah.
he's very, he's in love with her at the beginning, but maybe there's the idea like why, well, they were going to get married. What does it say? When they were together, they're very happy. They didn't say that. Oh, but then when he's about to leave to see his father, he said, I will, he gives her a ring, which is kind of like, betrothment. And I will, when I am king, I will come and fetch you away. But yeah, but then when he's
Mhm.
about to become king, yeah, he forgets her.
Yeah. And she is described, at least in the version I'm looking at, the Pittsburgh one,
Mm.
she is described as his fiance. The
Ah,
the true bride is described as, and she's described as the true bride as well,
mm,
later on. So there is at least some implication of engagement and marriage, although
right.
you're right, they don't actually specify that at the beginning that they were. Oh no, it's at least again in mine it says once upon a time there was a prince who had a fiance whom he loved very much.
Oh, I'm sorry. In this version too, it says betrothed to a maiden. So it's very clear that they're,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah,
engaged.
yeah. Yeah. So then there's less of a question there, I guess. But but yeah, I get I forget how we got into that particular topic.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm still wondering, yeah, the death moving the story forward. I mean, yeah, I propose that maybe there's something about the prince's character where he's a little complacent. Um, so at the beginning of the story, he's going to marry her. Yeah, it's not like he was waiting really too long, but then his father dies. But then, yeah, he forgets or he goes along with his father's wishes. And so he's maybe, yeah, a little too passive or something. And then, yeah, when he's presented with this interesting image of 11 copies of the true bride and the true bride, he's still sort of he's not getting it. It's like a little slow,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
He
yeah.
has to like be his attention has to be diverted by her something dramatic, her dying, oh, or her
Yeah.
almost dying.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um I mean, I can relate to that. I often feel pretty thick in my life and when something drastic happens and it's very clear what action is needed to be taken, but the rest of the time I can be a little wishy-washy myself of like, oh, is this the right thing to do? I don't know. What should I do? Where do I go? What should I be doing right now with my day?
Mm.
I have all these lists of things to do and like, what's the most important one and blah, blah, blah. But when it's like, oh, the paper's due tomorrow. Okay, well, I guess I need to work on the paper tonight then, or whatever it is.
That sounds a little like Crazy Very. Do you remember him from that
Hmm.
Von Schoenworth story?
Oh yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah,
he's
yeah.
very dreamy. kind of goes off. He's going to be married to the beautiful girl that he's in love with. She's in love with him. She had all the suitors kind of going after her and interfering, and finally they've got rid of all those guys. They're going to get married, but then he goes off into the woods and he's hunting, and he gets trapped. He gets lost and he gets ensnared by a mermaid, right?
Hmm. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Are
I
these
mean,
stories telling us to like not be complacent? Like they've seen lots of people kind of like, well, just keep, plowing the same field, life's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're telling us not to be complacent. They're telling us that people people have been complacent for, several hundred years based on when these stories were told, and who knows how much longer beforehand. Sort of in along the line of the Greek tragedies that we were discussing in the Dionysus episode of like the tragedies can reveal, like you're saying, the ways that we should not behave, like don't be complacent, but then also they show that being complacent is a human thing that we do. And so it's like watch out for it, but also like know that this is common to humanity.
Mm,
And so don't think that you're like don't shame yourself for experiencing it, but
mm,
also know that it's possible to escape it, to work past it, to
mm,
to come back to the true bride and actually marry the one that you want to marry.
mm,
Um, in your heart, whatever that means.
mm.
Um, yeah. Let's see. So what did you think about the lion and the tests
Lion.
that the lion sets for the huntsman?
Yeah, I was kind of, I thought it was funny, delighted by suddenly there's this magical talking lion who knows everything in the middle of the story. Uh,
Yeah.
by the way, where was he when the king was dying and making bad decisions? Or yeah, it says it says something like the lion knows everything, right? And this might get back to our theme of like knowing versus knowing, like
Mhm.
knowing based on sort of surface logic, what has been done before, which seems to make sense without like a deeper intuition and without creative insight, without basically the birds or the water, something use symbols for those things. Um, the lion, yeah, and the lion seems like, yeah, he's obviously very intelligent and he's kind of noble. So he's kind of like a king again, king of the jungle or whatever. Um, and yeah, and he sees the truth, but he doesn't see the truth. He sees the literal truth of these guys are not guys, but you know, he doesn't see through their disguise into what reality, what the story is really supposed to be.
Mhm.
He's like stuck in the wrong story, and he's telling them, he sees clearly, but he doesn't really know what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because I was thinking of the lion as sort of, I mean, I guess it's, I don't know, maybe this is kind of obvious. Maybe not, I don't know, but the lion standing in as like instinct, the sort of animal instincts, the sort of
Okay,
gut
yeah,
intuition,
yeah,
sort of knowing. And I
that's
think
good.
that what you said actually kind of reaffirms that for me because like our instincts can tell us, oh, there's something off about these huntsmen. If the
Yeah,
lion is a metaphor for a part of the king, like some part of
yeah,
him is like, something's off about these huntsmen, but I can't quite tell what it is. So let me put
yeah,
some tests and see what I can find out.
right.
And then he's like, oh, so he does the weird thing with the peas, and then he does the weird thing with the spinning wheels, and they pass both of those, and the instinct is still like, like, no,
Mm,
no, there's still something off here. But then at that point, the king completely discounts the instinct, and he sort of banishes the lion,
mm,
because the evidence is not matching. But the instinct is not intelligent enough to say, oh, these huntsmen are really women, and one of them is your true bride returned, and she has your ring under the glove, and if you take the glove off, you'll see the ring. Like, if you really have this miraculous lion creature that knows everything, why isn't the lion telling him that? Like, that would be
Mm,
the, I mean, you'd wrap up the story a little boringly, so that's probably why, but
mm.
or maybe the prince wasn't ready to hear that, and the lion was like only telling the prince what he would be able to hear to sort of lead him to make the decision on his own. You could guess all kinds of things, but I do think just within the internal logic of the story, like why the lion doesn't reveal the whole truth if the lion knows everything is definitely an interesting question.
No, no, I like that interpretation that it's instinct. And yeah, your instinct will kind of, yeah, will bring you deeper into your sensory experience. Like will tell you something. It's like your common sense, the sense. I mean, common to all the senses. It's drawing a conclusion about what you're not seeing on the surface. Um, but yeah, he needs his wisdom, and he doesn't have that. And I wonder if the story is saying he gave up his truth, or he wasn't honest anymore to his heart, and that's why he's not wise anymore, and he's not making good decisions. It's like
Mm,
he set forth this promise, gave a symbol of it, the ring, to somebody, and then got discombobulated when things went haywire, and now he's lost. He
mhm.
doesn't recognize the truth. And then, yeah, I think you're right. The lion is his instinct, and it's telling him, but he doesn't know what to do with it exactly. He sets up and that's a good thing to do when your instinct is telling you something. Set up a test. You can bring your rationality into it, and you can start to reflect and bring your wisdom into it and your intuition. But yeah, he's not able to see what the tests are telling him. He should have done another test. It's a fairy tale. You're supposed to do three things. He only did the two things. And then he's
That's right.
like, you're wrong. Just go away. And then he's like, I'm still just gonna be marrying this other princess that's like a political uh, friend or whatever. It's like the superficial kind of what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can see the lion and the instinct, and I think this works kind of metaphorically, and I think it also works kind of literally for people that when we when we see the prince put aside his truth as represented by the true bride, we see the prince put it aside. There's something in him that still knows truth from falseness. That's still able to kind of suss out the way back to union with the true bride, whatever that's meant to
Mhm.
represent. Um, and the lion, so you see the prince sort of abdicate his conscious awareness of his connection, then the sort of unconscious, the instincts, the lion sort of points him in that direction, and he applies well, I guess they both do, but they apply like a rational test, which is not enough to capture the truth because the truth outwits them.
Yeah.
And so at that point, he even discounts the unconscious or the instincts, the unconscious urgings. And
Yeah.
so he's kind of, in that sense, he's kind of lost until the third disaster happens. The third death the third almost death in this case happens.
Mm.
Um, and he is moved by compassion, I think. Thinking something had happened to his dear huntsman, he ran up to him in order to help
Mm.
him. So he's moved at the end by compassion, and that's kind of the thing that saves him from ending up married to the wrong person for, the rest of his life,
Mm.
metaphorically speaking. Um, yeah, I just like that. I like that image of the lion though. Like I don't know, I just see like a very because the lion's like what was it? You think you have 12 huntsmen. The king says, yeah, there's 12 huntsmen. And the lion says, you are mistaken. They are 12 girls. And just the like the know-it-all nature of the lion, but also the sort of like matter-of-factness with which he speaks is really I like that character. It's very uh, enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah, I like that style. I imagine him as like a big old lion for
Yeah.
some reason.
Yeah. 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 He's definitely like not out there hunting a lot. Like he's just
Yeah.
this chill, like he just sits in the throne room and like tells you things.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
very
yeah,
articulate and very direct.
yeah, 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 yeah. So then he has them step on peas. And that one, I mean, I guess the peas and the spinning wheel. Um, the spinning wheel seems, at least on the surface, a little cut and dry. Um, Women like spinning wheels, so if you put out spinning wheels, they'll be drawn to them.
Mm.
I'm not sure women would agree to that. To my mind, it would be like put up, I don't know, some nice jewelry or something that would,
Mm.
the women are women really drawn to objects of household chores.
Mm.
It's like put, put up a dishwasher and see if they're drawn to the dishwasher. I mean, you know, um, patriarchy and whatnot, gender
Mm.
roles and whatnot.
Mm.
It's kind of funny, but um, the peas, I don't know. In both cases, like the women need to reinforce in themselves some kind of masculine trait. So the straightforwardness instead of sort of the side to side,
Mm.
which in a more esoteric, like the masculine and the feminine as
Mm.
forms of energy rather than specific having anything to do with genders or anything.
Mm.
Um, the masculine is usually very logical and straightforward, and the feminine is more
Mm.
watery and emotional and communally oriented and kind of like multivariant, like they can go in multiple
Mm.
directions. So I can see that with the if they tread straight forward through the
Mm.
P's and nothing moves, then they're presenting more of a masculine energy.
Mm.
And if they walk through undistracted by the typical accoutrement of the feminine, then they must be masculine. So
Mm.
so there's sort of a um like a and this is very Jungian, as we all know I like to do, but there's an embodiment of the opposite sex, the opposite
Mm.
gender presentation.
Mm.
Where, in Carl Jung, the men have the anima, which is the sort of suppressed feminine traits, and the
Mm.
women have the animus, which is sort of the suppressed masculine traits.
Mm.
And so if this is a story told from the female point of view, there's a way where the woman loses the masculine at the start and then has to win him back. So
Mm.
if the true princess is actually the hero of the story, the one we're supposed to be following,
Mm.
she has to take on some masculine traits of her own in order to reunite with her internal masculine of the prince who has been distracted and is off doing social stuff and isn't attending to her.
Mm.
In the same way that in a lot of male-oriented stories, like the man has to either confront the sort of monstrous feminine in like the dragon or the witch or whatever it is, the sort of evil feminine, or like there'll be a moment where they have to proclaim their true love. They have to say something emotional. They have to get in touch with
Mm.
something a little more feminine in them.
Mm.
It's not exactly that common in fairy tales, but I think we can map it on enough of like the man who gets in touch with his emotions is better able to draw, that true feminine part of himself into his sense of who he is. And you
Mm.
sort of see the women doing that here. Um, that's the only sense I can make of the two tests. I don't know if you have anything to.
Yeah, I was basically thinking the same thing. Yeah, the story goes out of its way to say they would be slipping and sliding, kind of going, wiggling all over the place. But no, they step firmly and straight and go forward. And then yeah, with the spinning wheels too, they're not distracted. They go forward, sort of straight and narrow. Obviously, the peas resemble like a lot of sort of impossible tests that are given
Hmm.
by sort of characters and stories. So it's kind of a trope, like the evil stepmother of Cinderella, like throws a bunch of peas and seeds and stuff on the ground. It's like you have to collect these. And other stories, like the protagonist has to collect all these in like an impossible amount of time. And then of course the somebody helps them, like the birds help them. In this
Right.
case, they have. Interestingly, he seems to be a male servant, which we can maybe think about that, but they have a
Hmm.
servant of their own. And that's also like how the prince and the princess's sort of people around them, the social structures around them seem to mirror each other. Both of them have a father, both of them have an advisor. Um,
Hmm.
Although the prince doesn't have anything like the 11 other huntsmen, right? Which we could look at as an interesting way. They're the thing that disguise they're the thing that resemble the true bride and they disguise themselves so they're true and false, and they're the things that are able to cross the barrier between the two worlds who that have been, you know, like parted asunder from the prince's
Yeah.
false word or whatever we could say, you know, his wrong decision or his discombobulation that set him on the wrong path. Or,
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't seen that of the disguising themselves as huntsmen, which is obviously very typical masculine. Like the huntsmen were men, usually, I assume,
yeah,
huntsmen.
yeah,
But then also like Paleolithically, like the men would go and hunt and the women would, I mean, who knows if that's true, but that's the stereotype
yeah,
that
sure,
we've
sure, yeah,
inherited. So there's definitely a lot of taking on of a masculine trait or a disguise in order to in order for the feminine to enter into the realm of the prince, like where the prince has gone, whether what we want to say the prince is part of a female experience or the prince is the main character and it's a male story, whatever
mm,
it is, who then and
mm,
then the man who has lost his connection with something true.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it could probably work both ways, to be honest. But in either case, the prince is in a structure and they have to penetrate
yeah,
that structure and
yeah.
like present themselves to him in the right way at the right time that he recognizes them,
That's right.
sees her ring and all of that. But
That's right.
it's you're right, it's the disguise that allows them entry. And I
Yeah.
hadn't seen that. And I think that's important. It feels important. I'm not sure specifically. I can't point to like for this specific reason, but it feels like the that's the princess's the true bride's that's her strategy. That's the father her father comes and says, "What can I do for you?" And she says,
Yeah,
give me a disguise and mirror me with all these other versions of myself that
that's
look
right.
exactly like me.
That's
So
right.
that's her whole strategy. So there's got to be, that's got to be a key element of the teaching of the tale, what it's trying to represent to us.
I think it is. Yeah. It's definitely a salient element, right? It very much catches your eye. I
Hmm. Hmm.
Something I just thought of is from our Dionysus episode is that the princess almost dying, or in some stories somebody goes to sleep. It's almost like, you know, this literally happens when you go to sleep. You access the unconscious. You have dreams. You have a different way of seeing it. You're in the world that doesn't make sense to the conscious mind, and then you often have answers, you know, from reveries, from daydreams and whatnot, dreams or daydreams. And maybe that's, you know, I didn't think of this until you said she has that idea for the 12 huntsmen. At first, she's like crying, she's despondent, she has no idea what to do, she almost dies. She goes into, I would say it looks like she goes into a deep sleep and then she comes out and then she has the answer. You know, it's a very creative answer, right? Like we wouldn't have thought of that just thinking linearly. So, and then
Yeah,
later on
yeah.
also she falls into a deep sleep, she comes out, and in that point that's where the answer comes, where the prince, instead of having his mind on like, okay, I'm supposed to marry this lady that I promised my father I'd marry, and then he gets, you know, shocked out of his stupor. He
Yeah, I
come
mean that's so if we wanna map the near death onto like a sleep and dream and then what you bring back from the dream realm, like she goes to the dream realm and she comes back with the reminder, the ring That it's in she doesn't
Right. Yeah.
literally do that, but like within the story,
Yeah,
the
that's
next
right.
thing that happens when the result of her passing into the dream realm is when she's woken back up, the truth is revealed. Like she brings the ring back with her
Yeah.
into the story in that moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first time she comes up with the idea, and the second time she brings the missing piece back.
Yeah. And that's where the
That's
story effectively ends when she can take off that, well, I guess he takes off her glove, but the disguise is finally lifted and the truth is revealed, which is a great scene also, just visually. But
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then at that point he sends he's like he's out he's freed himself from the spell that he put himself under, and he's like, oh no, other bride, go away, I don't need you, I have this old dish or this old key, and I'm perfectly happy with it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. um hmm. I don't know, is there anything else we could dive into the dish and the key metaphors, um and then at the end the line is accepted back. So I mean that's pretty cut and dry of like, oh, now he's trusting his instincts again. He's kind of back in with the
Mm,
truth, and he's more aligned in who he is, and all of that.
mm.
Um, but yeah.
I one thing I forgot to mention is it seems telling that they were huntsmen. Typically we in these stories, there's many times a hunter, and I tend to think of that as like someone who can, I don't know, who has true sight. They have
Hmm.
bows and arrows or a gun, and they can shoot things from far away. That actually requires a whole lot of skill, and there may even, according to John Vervaeke, there's even deep ties in evolution to our ability to use projectile weapons, which no other animal can do. It's not just that like chimpanzees can't manually throw, they don't have the brain that can calculate. I'm right here. There's this other animal a little far away moving in this direction in 3D, and I need to right now throw this thing, release it so that it hits where that other animal will be when this thing that I'm throwing will be over there. It's really complex.
Hmm.
And he says that has something to do with uh, a kind of key jump in evolution that happened something like 40,000 years ago. This is way in prehistory, but and he talks about how he thinks there is a link between that jump in evolution and word and things that we ways that we think now even, that started developing at that time. So we started to be able to project. We started thinking of objects. And all
Hmm.
those words have this root "ject" in them, which means to throw. And
Yeah.
so there's,
Yeah.
I can't talk articulately about it, but there's something about this jump in evolution having to do with our, brain's ability to throw things. But that's
Yeah.
just a cool little aside. That's not necessarily, that may be something that like folk tale tellers were aware of on some unconscious level or not, but it's an interesting thing to think about. But when I think also of the huntsman, I think of someone that goes into the woods. So they're sort of into the unknown. Uh,
Yeah.
of course, there's a lot of virtue in that sort of I mentioned the skill in seeing and hunting, tracking. It's like finding an animal using all your senses, um, and also going into the unknown, going into danger. So I think it's interesting that the princess makes the copies of herself and they become huntsmen. Like you were saying, it's also because they need to meet the prince where he's at. They're not like not doing some, you know, stereotypical non-male stuff. They're doing a stereotypical male thing, but I think maybe it's also has to do with like from the princess, excuse me, the prince's side of the story, it's about his development in seeing and making, going from the naive boy in love to the man that has some experience of knowing what decisions to make, which means sometimes maybe saying no to the social order or even your father in some way and becoming mature in that way. But maybe that has something to do with, excuse me, going out into the woods and kind of developing yourself there.
Yeah, that is interesting. So there's a couple of things to say. Um, One, I really liked the huntsman and the hunting and the sort of the way that that would shift the brain functioning, like you were
Yeah,
saying, or
it's
Vervaeke,
interesting.
see, you were quoting Vervaeke. That's really interesting. And I was thinking of like our discussions around Robin Hood and how the bow was the weapon of the yeomen, the sort of like mid-level, not quite nobles, but not peasants, you know. So there's sort of something in there of like the level of skill required to do that, to hunt, to be in the woods, to be, I mean, Robin Hood was in the King's Forest. They had the King's Foresters, like that the servants of the nobility who went into the woods and tended the woods and hunted for the king and his household were elevated. So there was some sort of a like something there. And then the woods in general are just like they're the unconscious. They're the place you go when you're lost. If you're lost, you know, like you were saying, the unknown. I'm thinking of Dante's the whole Divine Comedy starts with him being lost in the woods.
Hmm.
I found myself in midlife lost in the woods and then he meets Virgil and Virgil takes him to the entrance to hell and they go to hell and that's the start of the Inferno.
Hmm.
Um, but the metaphor of being lost in the woods is sort of like coming to yourself and not knowing where you are. Um, the one who has facility in the woods would be one who's able to kind of go into that unknown and come back out of it, which mirrors what you were saying about the deaths and the dreaming and the going into the unconscious. So the foresters or the woodsmen or whatever, huntsmen, having that familiarity, being able to go in and to the place that other people get lost and find their way, hunt what they need, bring it back out. You know, that's what she does, metaphorically speaking, when these moments of death, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And then what was the second thing? Um, well, I've forgotten it. But oh no, you were saying, yeah, because no, that was really good. You were saying the prince starts off like naive.
Mm.
And I it like flashed that the whole, if we look at the story from the prince's point of view, like you can map that onto sort of just the human experience of like innocence to experience,
Hmm.
right? So there's a truth that we know as children, but that we're naive about.
Mm.
And then as we grow up, we get sort of caught up in everyday life and we lose that sort of innocence. But the innocence, as represented by the true bride, follows us, comes into the world that we are lost in, and does its best to try and rescue us and bring us back. And so that is the journey from like innocence to intelligence to
Yeah.
wisdom,
Yeah.
and represented from like the true bride to the false bride to the true bride, but having to go through that process to get to that actual holding of wisdom and the marriage with the truth that is wisdom. I hadn't seen that so clearly, and I don't know, that was neat. You brought that out for me with the way you were talking about the prince.
Mm. Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
the sort of yeah, the stakes of it seem very high. I don't know if this is interpreting it right, but the stakes of this education of the prince seem very high, as shown by how the his true bride almost dies twice. I feel like he's a hair's breadth close to like going the wrong path in life, you know?
yeah. I mean, like you said, fairy tales, things happen in threes.
Mm.
Um, and if she had died the third time, she probably would have died for real. Yeah, yeah, man. But no, I got that sense too of the like the prince. being at kind of a make or break point here, you know, like if he
Mm.
doesn't, because if he doesn't recognize her in this moment, he's going to marry the false bride, and then I feel like that kind of seals his fate at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, he
So
forever goes off into the shadow life started by his, ill-fated agreeing to what his sick father had asked.
yep. Yeah, just going along with that sick social order and doing
Yeah.
what you think you're supposed to and losing your sense of yourself and your truth.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
anything else in this story you thought of? I like this one. It was pretty cogent.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to end on such a downer note, but I don't have anything else to say. Um, I like this one too. When I first read it, I certainly didn't have all of this in mind, but I could tell there was enough of a thread of symbolism through the story that we'd be able to unpack something from it. And I don't know. I like the lion. Like I said, I like any stories where there's that element of the sort of noble animal, the sort of
Mm,
instincts that are not, because instincts are always sort of poo-pooed as like, oh, it's violence and sex, and they should be gotten rid of, but not all of them, the line, the noble instincts, that there are things that know the truth that can save us. There's intuition, and we have to sort of, like we were saying, get out of our intellect and kind of listen to those quieter voices inside of us to kind of find the way through. Otherwise, we do end up marrying the wrong bride, and we get stuck in that shadow world like you're talking about. So there. I'll end it at that because that's a little more. I mean, if you have anything to say, I'm just saying for me, but that's at least a little more hopeful.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's a nicer note to end on. But yeah, if you want, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the instinct. I think that's part of the reason we like these folk tales and myths. I mean, aren't they kind of telling us to kind of pay more attention to our instinct and why don't we? I mean, uh, I of
Hmm.
course think it's something like Vervaeke's answer where we do need rationality, but our definition of rationality has become narrow and narrow and narrower to where it's like this kind of superficial, highly computational kind of thing. Of course, computation ability, as Plato pointed out, and practice is helpful in rationality, but as Vervaeke points out, rationality is also sort of knowing where to look in the problem space and, not just crunching numbers, basically. And he and I agree, thinks that's kind of where we went wrong. We've banished the lion completely, the instincts. We don't trust the intuition. Um, yeah, it was just had like a family gathering a few weeks ago, and one older family member had like she's kind of she knows kind of like folk beliefs and superstitions and things like that, and she had mentioned it to some more educated like family members, and they sort of like automatically like discounted that way of thinking.
Hmm.
And the automatic part is the part I really have a problem with. I mean, besides any social dynamics of not being kind or respectful or whatever, but just the automatic. Like I think that's not good. I think that's really unwise for you to be thinking in this particular kind of ratiocination or whatever you want to call it, this logical, narrowly logical way where you're discounting like automatically anything that reeks of spirit or spirits or intuition. You're making wrong decisions that way. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think the response that comes up for me kind of weaves through everything you've been saying from the beginning of like the way we've banished the lion to what Vervaeke's saying about um rationality versus just computation or whatever labels you want to put on it, but that idea.
Yeah, yeah.
And then this family discussion that you're talking about as well, and the sort of wider social thing you're pointing at of the way we just shut down all of that stuff is like the the intellect or rationality or logic or whatever, those are skills that we have. They're part of being human, but I think we take them for like all of being human. And we miss a lot of other. It'd be like if you only ever lifted weights with one arm, and ever you did everything with one hand and you just kind of had the other one tied behind your back and you're like, no, I don't have a left arm. Like you could probably get by, but you're depriving yourself of being able to do things pretty easily. Like you can't do any of that with one hand. I could try and juggle, but that's not going to really be as effective. And I think that I would agree with Vervaeke if I'm understanding correctly. I don't mean to put words in his mouth, but if I'm understanding correctly, I would agree that that's definitely where I think we went wrong as a society is this sort of like, well, it's only real if it's only valuable if we can prove it with repeated experimentation. And once it's been proven, we don't have to look at it again because we already know the truth. And so we know the truth, and so we don't have to examine anything about it ever again. Folk beliefs aren't provable, therefore they can't be true. And therefore we're safe to discount anything, any wisdom that might be in them. I think clearly anybody listening to this podcast where we're picking apart fairy tales is appreciative of the truths that can be found in folk beliefs. But yeah, it just seems self I don't know, self-castrating, self-weakening, self
Yeah.
like in,
But it makes you feel stronger. You have a bigger ego. You can win arguments because that's part of the sort of milieu that we live in. That's the type of
mm,
speech that has more prestige. And it's not scientific real science is we put something on a shelf, but we test it. We still test it. And eventually there'll be like a paradigm shift. This is like Kuhn's paradigm idea. Eventually there'll be a paradigm shift and we'll take that thing off the shelf and like we'll have to change it or discard most of it. It's not a truth anymore, not a
mhm,
scientific truth. And science
mhm.
is a process. It's not this, but yeah, this scientism or whatever it is, where it's this sort of this ideology that comes from some kind of scientistic worldview where it's, we live in a dead universe. There's no spirit, there's no matter, there's no minds, only brains. That's where
Mhm.
that sort of shutting down of folk beliefs or something comes from.
Yeah, yeah. I like that you tie it in with power because I think ego, power, domination of an argument. I
Yeah.
think to my mind, I think that's probably where it actually comes from.
Mm.
Excuse me, because I think, like as you point out, science is a methodology of testing. And if we were to be true scientists, we would constantly be testing things to see if they were true. We would constantly be very clear with ourselves about what we know and what we're assuming. One great example of that being consciousness, like the
Mm.
mind's brains, not minds. Like we don't know that. We don't know what consciousness is. We just sort of
Yeah.
assumed a certain thing. It answered several equations and questions, and so we thought that was true. And now we use that to like beat people up in arguments, like you're saying.
Mm.
But the goal there isn't truth. It's I want something that I can win with. I want something that guarantees
Yeah.
me um, power, control, a way of doing things that makes sense to me, and then I don't have to look at them again. Like that seems to be the unconscious drive behind a lot of this stuff. Is the desire to have so much of a thing of power and that is guaranteed, stable, and true, and you can use that to secure yourself against whatever, be that
Yeah.
someone else's argument, be that the varieties of nature, the vagaries of nature, whatever it is, the uncertainty, the fact that we're going to die, like anything, you have some sort of a
Yeah.
security that you can sort of retreat behind, and
Yeah.
then you're more invested in reinforcing that security than you are actually discovering the truth that lays constantly ever outside of security. You always have to go into the woods to find the new thing. You always have to kind of explore to find the new thing. I think another example I'll just drop real quick, and then I'd love to hear any responses you have. Um, I wish I had a stronger reference for this, but I have heard that in Darwin's later writings, his focus was on like compassion and care and how
Mm,
present that is in nature, and that the
mm,
species that cooperate are more successful than the ones that are just like non-cooperative. And
mm,
yet so many people are like, well, it's the theory of evolution, only the strongest survive. And like,
mm,
that's not what Darwin came to.
mm,
The theory of evolution that you're subscribing to in that particular argument is limited. And it's a theory, first of all, so it's not a fact. It's something, it's a hypothesis that we're supposed to test against, but it's
mm,
wielded like it's an ultimate truth, and it shuts down all any other arguments against it when it's a theory. It's a theory. We don't even know, and we're discovering new ways of how it works. And like I said, I believe Darwin towards the end of his life was more focused on cooperation than on competition.
mm,
Um, and yet we use it to justify capitalism in the negative sense. We use it to justify um, the rape and pillage of the environment and
mm,
of other societies. It kind of all comes back to like for me for like a sense of like supremacy, like power over. If it
mm,
guarantees you power over, then it maintains itself. And I
mm,
think that that's if we're going to go back to the earlier conversation of the problem that we are stuck in that we keep trying to solve, but we keep making it worse.
mm,
I think you can boil it down to that need for supremacy and why we need it, as
mm,
a sort of unconsciously, like as a society of like why we need to be so certain, so secure, so safe in our knowledge that we can't handle any kind of uncertainty. We can't
mm,
question what the mind is. We can't question what consciousness is. We can't question survival of the fittest, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. Searching for truth. It's thinking of what you're saying and going and with the story too. It's a very tricky thing. And sometimes the way to get there is through a disguised version. I mean, in a way, the Huntsmen are a disguised version because the 11 of the 12 are not only superficially, but superficially like his betrothed. And they're also dressed differently and also doing something different than they usually do. They've really come out of the woodwork to try to meet him where he's at, but he still has a hard time. Yeah, I'm just thinking of any conversation we're talking about in our society or in the family one I mentioned where yeah, you're trying to shut down things. I mean, it is important. You do, just like the prince, you need to say no sometimes to things in conversation. But yeah, you should do it in a wise way, not like, yeah, in a dominating way, in an egotistical way. And yeah, just the truth set the prince free, right? Like the cliche goes. And the
Mhm.
truth can help to set us free, but it's not it's something that is very hard to see.
Hmm.
And so you have to have humility and you have to not be complacent and you want to seek after it. You have to be
Yeah, you got to
comfortable
go
in the
into the
woods.
woods. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I think I mentioned this before, but I'll just say it again because it fits here. Like it's the act of compassion. It's the act of connection and of caring for someone who has suddenly collapsed on the ground and the prince doesn't know why, but he's moved to care. It's survival of the compassionate. That's the thing that leads us to truth and further growth and back to the 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 connection with it that we had as children, um, at least in the story.
Mm. Yeah, I'm thinking of compassion in this story and in real life. It's something of a recognition of an identity, right? This is another, I'm not compassionate when I see a rock crack like I am when I see another sentient being. But I know that that sentient being, the prince, knows the princess is uh, like him, which there's some interesting things where she was hidden from him, but now with compassion, he sees who she really is. And there is I had some other idea. I'm sorry, but I actually forget. But anyway, that's an interesting idea that compassion kind of breaks open your shell of blindness. I wonder if there's even some sort of, you know, that maybe in Christianity it's something like love, which is has some kind of connection to compassion. And there's the love of this savior that died for you. Or in Buddhism, there's the love of the savior that died for you, that didn't have to die for you. He has this ultimate compassion for you. Or in Buddhism, obviously compassion is a huge quality. But yeah, that's an interesting thing, and I don't quite understand it. And I'm afraid that we also empathy is kind of a cliched thing in our society, and sometimes I think it's way overused, or it's a lot of it's to use to kind of virtue signal and stuff. You're advertising yourself as having that identity as an empathetic person, or you're sentimental, and sort of signaling like how deep feeling you are, but it's not really for any good purpose or any important purpose or anything. It's a thing that we sort of laud socially to show, and then it gets back to ego and sort of social competition and everything. But yeah, anyway, true compassion,
Mhm.
yeah, that does sort of unlock your egotistical. I mean, it breaks you out of your egotistical concerns, right? That's literally what compassion is. So then he sees the truth, and then he can invite the lion back, and he's whole again, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the key point, I think, for me, of compassion in the good sense, empathy in the good sense of like you are able to, instead of seeing just your concept of the other person, you're able to see what their experience really is, and you're able to say, I feel you as an equal. I see you, I meet you as an equal. I'm curious about you. I'm interested. I mean, in the family discussion, the metaphor of that we're using of like, I'm not shutting down your argument. I'm curious why you believe these things.
yeah.
I see that they're important to you. You and
Mm,
I are the same on some level. We're equals, so I don't have to be better than you. I don't have to tell you you're wrong. I can say, oh, well, I think that, folk beliefs don't really have a lot of evidence behind them. They tend to be very superstitious. So I tend to discount them, but they seem important to you. And how do you feel about it? And then you can have that dialogos that we talk about.
yeah.
But I think what you're talking about with the social signaling is, to my mind, like, there's this thing that a lot of people are like, oh, empathy. I don't know, a lot of people, but I've heard it said that like, oh, empathy is a problem. Um, and I would hope that what they're pointing to is the tendency to turn another person's problem into an identity without actually seeing the other person. So
Mm,
a lot of people there's a lot of, uh again, I say a lot. I know of some people in the anti-racism, um the people who teach anti-racism, how to not be racist, the African
mm,
American people. And you hear a lot of stories about white people who don't they want to be anti-racist, but they don't actually ask about the experience, or don't seem to actually care about the experience of the African American people, or whatever race you want to put in there,
mm,
um, or economic class, or whatever it is, whatever sort of other. They
mm,
sort of turn them into a cause, but they're not actually seeing the person. So there's no true compassion, there's no true empathy there, and
mm,
that is a problem.
mm,
But genuinely caring about someone else's suffering and listening to what their experience of their life is and why they're suffering, whether you agree with it or not, listening to them on their terms is that meeting of equals, is that
mm,
thing that will pull you out of your sort of frozen mindset of the way the world works.
mm,
And as you're able to take in other people's views of their world, yours becomes fuller. Yours becomes a
mm,
little less subjective and a little more objective, because you're able to
mm,
say, well, this is how I see the world, but this is how they see the world, and we're both looking at the same world.
Mm,
So there must be, I can just shut them down and say they're wrong and my truth is true and their truth is a lie. But if
mm,
I say both of our truths are partial, but they're true, then
mm,
we can have that dialogos, even if it's just in my head of like, oh, I take in their story. I can
mm,
see how these things seem true. These things I don't understand. These things I think are false. But I can sort of have that chemical interaction of the chemistry of my ideas and my view of truth and their view of truth can interact and
mm,
can reveal to me something that is more true. And then I grow and my view of society and my ability to act with effectiveness in my society grows because I'm acting from a place where I see more of what's true for more people.
mm,
And I can be of I can that the more people who do that, I think the healthier society becomes because more people are seeing a common truth.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, expanding this out into all of society. Yeah, especially with how polarized we are and with how social media sort of incentivizes just I'm gonna make an argument to people who believe in what I'm saying, and you get drawn deeper down the rabbit hole, or you're building up more of a silo around you. It's interesting we keep, I hear these metaphors a lot, and I think it's because it happens a lot. People see that they're sort of splitting apart and they're sort of growing stronger in their own ever narrowing sort of worldview of a group. Yeah, the I think, yeah, we need a lot of dialogue kind of skill and listening and not reactive and not and kind of just with a story like knowing if you're always in some illusions, right? Like you
Hmm.
will never take in the world, and that's just like I'm just seeing things 100% as they are. Um, yeah, you always have to remember that, and hopefully it doesn't take somebody almost dying to like get your attention, right? You can have
Yeah.
compassion maybe with more everyday experiences.
Yeah. 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 I think yeah, the sort of the silos and the social media getting us all into these little groups, the little bubbles where we agree with each other. It's the same thing we were talking about with the prince and the moment of compassion. Like he's stuck in this ego thing, and we all get stuck in our like communal ego thing together. And if we
Yeah.
can have a moment of seeing the other people as they are, as equals, as people having their own like, and have that connection in all directions, then I think that's the thing that will break us out of these silos is when they're able to connect and integrate their information with each other, then the society kind of the lifeblood can flow through the whole of society instead of just being in these little isolated pockets where then it goes to war with itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think lifeblood flowing through society, the body politic. I think that's a good way to think about it. And yeah, I mean, I think we'll keep trying to do this on this podcast. And any listeners, please comment and add some vitamins to the little body that we're creating here.
Yeah, get that blood flowing, get those tingles.
Yeah.
Wake it up. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, sounds good. Okay,
Cool.
so yeah, good talking to you, and so we'll probably try another folktale or myth or something next time. Maybe a bit of
Sounds good.
philosophy.
Sounds good. We'll see where we end up.
Hey, take care, Ian.
All right.